talk to me about what excited you most about taking the role at Duolingo and kind of set up the framework for that.
Yeah, so at Duolingo, I thought, there was a real opportunity to have an impact. So for people that may not be familiar, Duolingo is a completely free product. And of course, there's a premium product that we call Plus, but really the only difference is that it's ad free and it comes with a couple other little perks. But the curriculum, what you learn, the levels, what Duolingo teaches you does not change. So if you aspire to learn a language on Duolingo and you're not paying for Duolingo, you still have access to all the same content. So I just thought, working at Duolingo, kind of feeling like if I got involved in the events team or the community team, there's a way to make an impact and I don't know, like join up with, link, or connect our community members. Because what's beautiful about language is, challenge me on this, but like people don't learn language to keep it to themselves, right? It is a social endeavor. People learn language to communicate with someone else. And that could be for the purpose of sharing hobbies. They like the same music, or they're discovering the same magazines or anime, or they're discovering the same movies. And there's a reason to learn the language, and it's to like communicate. So what I thought was really powerful about that is, we could host events or connect our community members with each other outside of the app, because that's why they're learning a language anyway. They want connection. So fostering those connections felt like a really cool opportunity. And it wasn't until I had been at Duolingo for a couple of months, because my role changed a little bit. But it wasn't until I'd been there a couple months that I really discovered what is my favorite feature about the company. And it's that everyone is experimenting. We are allowed to do and try whatever we want, so long as it is a good idea and it's in line with kind of the broader company goals. And so you're allowed to just dream up something and like try it out. You have a quarter. Okay, fine. Experiment with that. See if there's something behind that. And so when I came on board, I was working mostly in the community team with some events and some teacher initiatives where we're doing things with teachers in classrooms and language events. And then it moved, of course, later into the role that I have now.
And speaking of that, how did the idea of Duocon come about? Like, what are the early the nuggets that led to that?
Yeah, I definitely can't take full credit for the actual idea of Duocon, but at Duolingo, and this is funny now because our marketing team is a lot bigger, but we had like 12 people in the entire marketing org, including our CMO. And so this is 2.5 years ago. We had a brainstorm, and we just had these like big, I've probably been to brainstorms like these, but everybody has like Post-it notes and highlighters. They give you all this stuff for the day, and they fuel you up with like coffee and croissants. And then you sit around a room and you have like genuine brainstorms, and you think about like, all right, if Duolingo were a celebrity, who would they be? Okay, how can we connect some of our users? And people are like spitballing ideas. And so someone raised their hand and said, why don't we have a user conference? Like, why don't we, none of our competitors are doing this. Why don't we put our users under the same roof? These are people that are fanatical about all of our new products, all of our new features, every language course we announce. Why don't we just have a little conference and call it, I don't know, Duocon? And it was sort of born there as an idea that a couple people thought was interesting. And then we got the green light to just test it. We had like 2 months to throw something together. And so I say we because I raised my hand as somebody who was interested in the experiment along with 2 other colleagues of mine. And that's kind of where Duocon was born. Like 60 days later, we had a small little micro event in London, and that was in 2019.
And that was the very first one?
It was, yeah. So it was the first one. The format was pretty different from what it has become for a few reasons, like obviously COVID. Now the conference has been virtual for 2 years. Right. It was all internal. We had an external speaker, but he was a contributor to a course that we have. So yeah, it wasn't the kind of big blow up event that we're hoping that it develops into, and hopefully was a little bit part of this year. But yeah, it was just sort of like, let's see if people would fly around the world to come to this event. And shockingly, we sponsored a lot of people, of course, too. But shockingly, in London on short notice, we had someone come from Guatemala, someone come from Australia, someone come from South Africa. And that's a big deal to like get a visa if needed and pay a lot of money to like fly in for a conference for 2 days. Now it's a free conference, but it's not free to get there if you're not from 20 miles away. So.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is more or less the main focus of your job, right? Like you're more or less like planning Duocon 2022 right now, right?
Yes, I am planning it now. So yeah, what ended up happening is 2019's Duocon was really fun, and our CEO came for it, and he was like, "There's something here. Like it's palpable. I can tell that this is something that we should try again." And then of course, you know, COVID hit. So I was planning for an in-person conference in 2020, and right about at the time, I needed to pay like an enormous down payment on a venue in Brooklyn. Was when I was like, pause. We might not do Duocon at all. And so something really interesting happened where I got the opportunity. Well, after 2019 happened and we got the green light to do a 2020, before we even really knew what it was, before COVID hit, my two colleagues that worked on it with me were like, I'm working on a bunch of other projects. And so I am a little too busy to focus on Duocon. So it was sort of like three of us were looking at each other and I was like, I'll do it. And so at that time I thought this is really risky because I'm either working on an experiment that will fail and then what's my job, or this will become something. And so I really, put all my eggs in one basket, but I was like, I will volunteer to just do it. And so COVID hit, then we pivoted and I thought, should we just cancel Duocon? Like who wants another online event? That sucks. Like online events are not good. As someone that now plans them. And
Right.
so, but I thought, you know what? Let's meet people where they are. Like people want Duocon and they're at home. So if they want Duocon, they can wait a year or we can have it and they can tune in from home. So instead of hosting a 1,000 person event in New York, which was the original plan, we created a conference, pre-recorded it so that we could edit it and really make sure that it was like up to snuff and high quality. And then we aired it live for everybody to see on YouTube and Twitch. And it had 118,000 live views, which is bonkers because we were like, we'll do an amazing job in Brooklyn if 1,000 people come. And we didn't even think about how important it is as a company that's accessible and we provide free products, free educational products for people, that this event should always be online. So now the future of the event, of course, this past year in 2021, or that's still this year, but I'm looking behind because it happened, but we know that the event has to be online. So 2021, it was fully virtual. Again, over 100,000 people tuned in live. We've had like 360,000 people view the content since about 8 weeks ago. So it's like people are paying attention to what we're putting out there, and that's amazing. And I'm like overwhelmed by the interest. But if we revert back to at least a hybrid model, if we have a conference in person ever again in the future, people need to be able to access it from their home. Like we need people that can't get here because of visas, because of a pandemic, because of economic issues, because they work or because they have kids, they need to be able to see the conference from home. So now my challenge for 2022 is 2 events. I'm planning an in-person conference as I attended 2 years ago, but I need to make sure people can watch it from home. So that's where we are. So I'm mapping that out now. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the strength of Duolingo, like as a platform, just the app itself, is that you're learning language like on your own terms and like at your own pace as well. So having the convention be an extension of that kind of makes sense as well.
Yeah. And we're
Um,
trying to pivot like release schedules, like product releases and things around Duocon too, so that when you tune in to watch Duocon, you're watching interesting external speakers and experts, linguists, authors, professors. You're also watching interesting kind of influential people like your Trevor Noahs that speak 7 languages, like people that we admire and think our community of learners admire. They might have something interesting to say too, so we can give them a platform to share how culture or language impacts changes their lives for the better, like knowing more than one language. So yeah, I hope people tune in for Duocon because they can learn about like what our upcoming courses are, what our new products and features are, but also like let's learn about some other interesting people. We don't have to just toot our own horns for 3 hours. Like let's hear what other people think about language. So
totally. Duocon sounds like a logistical nightmare, or at least at the very least, a very daunting task that I think speaks volumes of your personal accountability and your can-do attitude. Can you bring me? I really hate this expression, but can you bring me through the soup to nuts experience of what it means to actually put on a convention, either physical or virtual, like without obviously exposing any sensitive data? Like, what do you have to do to put on a convention?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the process for me now, and this could be a different process for anybody. I'm not really sure, but this is the process at Duolingo. Is I, wrapped 2021, took some time off, created a whole report, and I did sort of a comparison of how 21 did with 2020. And then I'm in the process of like drafting a high level plan that I want to get approved by our executive team. But that also, I have to like guess what kind of budget we need. Well, I've never hosted Duocon 2022. I've never hosted a conference that's in person that also is a virtual conference, because we want the virtual component to be high quality. The last thing I want is for somebody to have like a bird's eye view of a cool conference and think, I wish I was there in person. It needs to be a cool experience virtually, because it has been for 2 years. So yeah, kind of understanding the budget. So it is knowing what the project is, dreaming up what's possible, and then working completely backwards, right? Like, so in order to have Duocon happen on June 24th or August 24th or whatever it is, what do I need to place? Like, what do I need to have happen? And that includes like constantly talking with other stakeholders or executive team members at Duolingo about like, what are the products that are coming down the pike? What are the products that are going to be ready to release? What are going to be the interesting things? So I'm like constantly working cross-functionally and engaging with our PR team to discuss like, what do you think is exciting that you know of that's going to be happening in 2022 with Duolingo? And is that something to like put on stage? And then I talk to the product teams. Hey, how's everything going with this product? Where are we on release dates? Is this something that we think is going to be ready by X date? And so it's just like a lot of management of like different teams and different functions. And then the creative component, right? Like finding, people to do set design, stage design, finding people to create the little interstitials, all the like little components between talks, all those slides, the hold music, selecting the songs for intermission. There's like a million little pieces. And one of these days I want to get down to like writing every single component in a list, because that would help me. But I have work back schedules basically that are like dozens of pages long of like, all right, on Friday the 12th, I will have to have X done. And then Monday the 14th or whatever, I have to have X done. And it's just like a to-do list that's enormous, months long. But it's fun. It's fun when it's over. That's the best day of my year, is the day after Duocon.
Of course. Well, that's a joke. I mean, it probably feels like planning a wedding, and like the best day is the day after the wedding. You're like, great, it's over.
Totally. And there's so much to get excited about in the planning phase. I mean, you also have to like, you dream really, really big, and then you start to learn about how much things cost, and you're like, okay, well, maybe we'll get rid of this part, and you start like cutting off different elements. And then you still have to be proud with the product. I think one of the most important things when you're talking about planning events, and this is similar to like in-person events I even did at Yelp, is you can't get too buried in the details, because I know what Duocon could have been, all of the intentions I have to like make the event perfect. But you don't. So when you watch it, you're not like, wow, they really missed the opportunity because this and this and this didn't happen. Because you don't know that like maybe I had a plan to have some other big component, but you're only there to witness what's on this side of the curtain. And I'm on the other side of the curtain knowing like what fires I had to put out to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really not unlike video games as well. There's some pretty famous video games where we've had a huge major feature in there that's actually really awesome that just didn't make it to the final thing, and nobody except for the dev team has ever played it. Like in Rock Band 2, Smells Like Teen Spirit was like the third or fourth song that went in there, but it didn't ship with the final game. And there was also a jukebox mode that was in there up until almost when we shipped. And so you would have been able to actually listen to Rock Band and just like have in the background as like party music, and then they yanked that whole feature out. So
and the fans are none the wiser, right? They're not like, I wish this product or feature I never knew existed. So they're not disappointed, but you are, because you knew of the opportunity could have existed. But yeah, once the event actually happens, you're like, oh, it all came together, or the product releases, you're like, okay, it's still, people are still really happy. So